In Season 1, Episode 1 of Invincible, aired March 25, 2021, there is a moment near the end where a man in a cape stands in a room full of the people who trusted him most, and every single one of them is dead or dying, and the camera holds on his face, and his expression is not guilt. It is not shock. It is not guilt or regret. It is the expression of a person who has finished a task. The bodies around him are still warm. The blood on his hands is still wet and warm. And quietly, the show cuts to black. That was the first 5 minutes of what Invincible would become. The brutality was never the point, but it was never an accident either. There are 50 moments across the first 4 seasons of Invincible that crossed a line. Some of them crossed it quietly, some of them crossed it so loudly that the animators themselves have said they wondered whether they had gone too far. What follows is every one of those moments examined not just for the violence they depict, but for the weight they carry, because the thing that separates Invincible from every other superhero show is not that it is more violent. It is that the violence means something. Every broken bone has a name attached to it. Every death has a consequence that ripples forward through the episodes that follow. The brutality is not spectacle, it is argument. And the argument is this. If you are going to tell a story about people who can punch through walls, you owe the audience the truth about what happens to the walls, and the people standing behind them, and the people who loved the people standing behind them. If this kind of long-form deep dive is something you enjoy, subscribing helps us keep making these videos. It costs nothing, and it takes a few seconds. Now, where were we? The first of these 50 moments is the one that started everything. The murder of the Guardians of the Globe. Season 1, Episode 1. The final minutes. Omni-Man, the most powerful hero on the planet, the Superman analog that the entire world trusts, sends a distress signal to the headquarters of the Guardians of the Globe. They arrive expecting an emergency. What they find is the emergency. Omni-Man is standing in the center of the room, and before any of them can process what is happening, the killing begins. Red Rush is the first to understand. His super speed allows him to perceive the attack in fractions of a second, which means he is the first to know and the last to die, which means his death is the longest, which means the audience watches a man who can move faster than sight spend what feels like minutes trying to break free from a grip that will not open. Omni-Man holds Red Rush by the skull. Red Rush punches Omni-Man's chest hundreds of times. His fists break before the grip does. And then the grip closes, and the skull gives way, and one of Red Rush's eyes is pushed out of its socket by the pressure, and the show does not cut away. It holds. It makes you watch. Darkwing is next, the Batman analog. He throws explosives, smoke bombs, everything in his arsenal, and none of it matters. Omni-Man grabs him by the leg and slams him into the floor twice. The first slam cracks the concrete. The second slam cracks Darkwing's skull open. Green Ghost phases through Omni-Man's first attack, but he catches her on the second pass, and his fist goes through her head while she is still partially transparent. Aquarius dies when Omni-Man uses War Woman's mace to cave in his face. Martian Man has his jaw ripped from his skull. War Woman gets her neck twisted 180 degrees. The Immortal is punched through the stomach and then decapitated. 7 heroes. 1 room. Under 3 minutes. And the show treats each death not as a spectacle but as a fact. This is what happens when the most powerful person in the room decides that the people in the room are obstacles. The violence is not stylized. The sound design is wet and heavy. The animation holds on impact frames that most shows would skip. And when it is over, Omni-Man stands in the center of 7 corpses, and the audience understands, for the first time, that this show is not going to protect them from what it is about. And what makes the Guardians Massacre work as a piece of storytelling, beyond the shock, is the architecture of the episode that surrounds it. The first 40 minutes of Season 1, Episode 1 are designed to feel like a different show. The Guardians of the Globe are introduced as competent, established, functioning heroes. They banter. They save people, they have relationships and rivalries and inside jokes. The show spends 40 minutes building the audience's investment in these characters specifically so that the final 5 minutes can cash in that investment. The massacre is not a cold open, it is a payoff. And the payoff is brutal because the setup was warm. The audience trusted the show. The audience trusted the genre. Superhero shows do not kill the entire team in the first episode. Superhero shows protect their heroes. The audience walked into the massacre carrying the assumption that these characters were safe, and the assumption shattered, along with Red Rush's skull, and the shattering was the point. Robert Kirkman has spoken about this in interviews. He has said that the goal was to establish the rules of the world in the first episode, and the rule is, no one is safe. No character is protected by genre convention. No character is protected by audience affection. The armor that every other superhero show wraps around its characters does not exist in Invincible. And the Guardians Massacre is the proof. 7 characters introduced and killed in a single episode. 7 established heroes with decades of combined service eliminated in under 3 minutes by a man they trusted. The lesson is not that Omni-Man is powerful. The audience already knew that. The lesson is that trust is the most dangerous weapon in the show. Every subsequent act of violence in the series carries the memory of this lesson. Every time a character trusts another character, the audience remembers the Guardians. And the trust is contaminated by the knowledge that trust in this world can be weaponized. That the person you trust most might be the person who kills you. That the hand on your shoulder might be the hand that crushes your skull. The second brutal moment is smaller but in some ways worse. Season 1, Episode 2, The Aftermath. The Guardians are found by paramedics. The scene is played not for shock but for grief. The bodies are arranged on medical tables. The injuries are cataloged. The audience sees what the violence did in the cold light of a morgue, and the absence of the action makes the damage more visceral, not less. Red Rush's skull is caved in on one side. Darkwing's face is unrecognizable. War Woman's neck is bent at an angle that human necks do not bend. The paramedics are professionals and even they are shaken. This is the moment when the show establishes its thesis about violence. It is not enough to show the punch. You have to show what the punch leaves behind. You have to stay in the room after the action is over. You have to look at the thing that used to be a person and understand that the thing cannot be undone. The third moment belongs to the Flaxan invasion. Season 1, Episode 3. The Flaxans invade Earth through a dimensional portal, and they are repelled once by the new Guardians. And they invade again, and they are repelled again. And then they invade a third time, and this time they have adapted. And the new Guardians are overwhelmed. And Omni-Man arrives. What follows is not a fight. It is an annihilation. Omni-Man flies through the portal into the Flaxan dimension, and the show follows him. He destroys their military, he destroys their cities, he destroys their civilization. The sequence is animated in a way that emphasizes scale. Omni-Man is a dot against a landscape, and then the landscape is on fire, and then the landscape is rubble. And then there is no landscape. He spends what appears to be years in the Flaxan dimension, aging visibly, growing a beard, and when he returns through the portal, he is covered in blood that is not his own, and he is dragging the corpse of the Flaxan leader behind him. The brutality here is not in any single act of violence. It is in the scope. One man destroyed an entire civilization. The show presents this as something that happened, not as something to celebrate. Omni-Man does not look triumphant when he returns. He looks tired. He looks like a man who has been doing manual labor for a very long time. And the audience understands that the labor was killing. Thousands and thousands of acts of killing, compressed into a sequence that lasts less than 2 minutes and implies a genocide that lasted years. And there is a specific detail about the Flaxan invasion that most viewers do not catch on a first viewing, but that becomes impossible to ignore on a rewatch. The Flaxans age in reverse when they cross into our dimension, and our dimension ages them when they remain. Time moves differently across the dimensional boundary. This means that when Omni-Man crosses into their dimension and spends what appears to be years fighting, the years are real. The beard he grows is real. The aging he undergoes as real. Omni-Man did not destroy the Flaxan civilization in an afternoon. He destroyed it across what was, from his perspective, years of sustained violence. He woke up every morning in a world he was systematically dismantling, and he went out and dismantled more of it. He ate meals between battles. He slept between destructions. He had time to think about what he was doing. He had days and weeks and months to reconsider, to stop, to choose a different approach. And he continued. He continued until there was nothing left. The beard is not a dramatic detail. It is a moral indictment. Every centimeter of hair that grew on Omni-Man's face represents time spent destroying a civilization. And the length of the beard represents the duration of the genocide. And the duration represents choice, sustained, repeated, daily choice. Omni-Man chose to continue every single day. And when he returned to Earth, he shaved the beard, and the shaving was an erasure, and the erasure was a lie. And the lie was, this did not take long. This was easy. This was nothing. The beard knew better. The fourth moment is the first time Mark Grayson bleeds. Season 1, Episode 3. Mark has had his powers for a short time. He is still learning. He fights a villain, and the villain lands a hit, and Mark bleeds, and the blood surprises him. The moment is brutal not because the injury is severe, but because of what it represents. Mark has inherited his father's powers. He is supposed to be invulnerable. And the first time someone tests that invulnerability, it fails. The blood is a small amount, a cut on the lip, a trickle. But the expression on Mark's face when he touches it and sees the red on his fingertips is the expression of a person who has just learned that the thing protecting them has limits. that the wall between them and the world is not solid, that the violence the world contains can reach them. This moment is brutal because it is the beginning. It is the first crack in the armor. Every brutal moment that follows, every broken bone and torn muscle and shattered organ, begins here, with a boy touching his own blood and realizing he is not what he thought he was. The fifth moment occurs in Season 1, Episode 5. Mark fights a villain named Titan. The fight takes them through city blocks, buildings are damaged, cars are thrown. The collateral damage is significant, but the brutal moment is not the fight itself. It is a shot that lasts approximately 4 seconds near the end of the sequence, where the camera pulls back and shows a street full of people who were in the wrong place. They are injured, some of them are not moving. An ambulance is arriving. A woman is holding a child. The shot does not linger on any single injury. It does not need to. The brutality is in the information. The fight between two superpowered beings has consequences for the people who live on the street where the fight happens. The show forces you to see the people, it names them, not with dialogue but with detail. The woman's coat is torn, the child's face is dirty. These are real people in this fictional world. And the violence between Mark and Titan has reached them. And neither Mark nor Titan stop to notice. And what separates Invincible's depiction of collateral damage from every other superhero property is the show's refusal to clean up after itself. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, cities are destroyed and then rebuilt. In the DC Extended Universe, battles level neighborhoods and the neighborhoods are restored. The destruction is temporary. The damage is reassured that the world can absorb the violence and return to normal. Invincible does not offer this reassurance. When a building falls in Invincible, the rubble stays. When a street is cratered, the crater remains in the background of subsequent episodes. When people die in a superhero fight, other people mourn them. And the mourning extends across episodes, across seasons, across the entire run of the show. The damage accumulates. It does not reset. And the accumulation is the argument. The argument is that violence has memory, that the world remembers what was done to it, that the crater in the street is a scar, and a city covered in scars is a city that has learned something about the cost of being protected by gods. The fifth moment, the shot of the injured civilians on the street where Mark fought Titan, is the first time the show makes this argument. But it is not the last. The argument repeats in every season, in every fight, in every wide shot that pulls back far enough to show the edges of the destruction where the normal people live. The edges are where the brutality is most honest. The center of the fight is spectacle. The edges are where the spectacle becomes consequence. The sixth brutal moment is one of the most iconic in the entire series. Season 1, Episode 8. The Train. Omni-Man has revealed his true nature. He is not a hero. He is a Viltrumite advanced scout sent to weaken Earth's defenses. Mark refuses to join him, and so Omni-Man decides to teach his son a lesson about the fragility of human life. He grabs Mark by the back of the head and flies at full speed into the path of an oncoming subway train. Mark's body is invulnerable. The train is not. The passengers are not. Omni-Man holds his son's face against the front of the train, and the train impacts Mark's body, and every person inside the train hits Mark at the speed of the train, and every person who hits Mark dies on impact. The animation does not cut away. It shows the bodies. It shows the moment of impact for individual passengers. It shows the bones breaking and the blood spraying and the expressions of people who have approximately 1/10 of a second to understand what is happening before they are killed by the body of a teenager who is being held in place by his own father. The scene lasts approximately 45 seconds. In those 45 seconds, hundreds of people die. Mark is conscious for all of it. He feels every impact. He sees every face. He is the weapon his father is using to kill these people, and he cannot stop it. And the knowledge that he cannot stop it is the most brutal thing in the scene. More brutal than the blood. More brutal than the bones. More brutal than the sound design that makes each impact land like a car crash. The train scene is the moment when Invincible stops being a superhero show and becomes something else entirely. It is the moment when the show says, "This is the cost." This is what these powers mean. This is what happens when someone who can move through solid matter decides to prove a point about what solid matter is worth. And the train scene deserves further examination because it is the moment that defines Invincible's relationship with its audience. Every superhero show has a scene where the hero fights a villain in a populated area. The standard approach is to show the hero protecting the civilians. The hero catches the fallen bus. The hero shields the bystanders. The hero diverts the energy blast away from the crowd. The standard approach treats civilians as props to be saved, objects whose primary function is to demonstrate the hero's goodness. Invincible inverts this. The train scene uses civilians not as props to be saved, but as casualties to be counted. Omni-Man is not protecting anyone. He's deliberately weaponizing his own son's body against hundreds of innocent people, and the show forces the audience to sit with each individual death, to see the faces, to hear the impacts, to understand that each impact is a life ending. The woman in seat 14 who was on her way home from work, the teenager in the third car who was listening to music, the elderly man near the door who was reading a newspaper. None of them are named, none of them are given dialogue, but the animators gave each visible passenger a distinct face and a distinct expression in the fraction of a second before the impact. And those faces are the show's gift to the audience. And the gift is terrible, and the gift cannot be returned. The train scene has been studied by animation students and critics as an example of how to use the medium to create empathy through specificity. The more specific the victim, the more empathetic the response. 100 nameless deaths are statistics. One face in a fraction of a second is a tragedy. And the train scene gives the audience dozens of tragedies in 45 seconds. Each one lasting just long enough to register as a person, just long enough to create the flicker of recognition that precedes grief, just long enough to understand that someone existed and then did not, and the transition between existing and non-existing was caused by a teenager's body being held in place by a father's hand. The 7th brutal moment follows immediately. Season 1, Episode 8. After the train, Omni-Man continues the beating. He takes Mark through buildings, through mountains, through the ground itself. He holds Mark's face against asphalt and flies at speed, dragging his son's body through concrete and steel and stone. The landscape deforms around them. Craters form. Mark's costume is destroyed. His face is swollen beyond recognition, his teeth are broken, blood pours from wounds that should be fatal but are not because his Viltrumite biology keeps him alive, which means the beating can continue, which means there is no mercy in his durability, only an extended capacity for suffering. The scene culminates on a mountainside. Omni-Man is holding his son by the throat. Mark is barely conscious. His face is a mask of blood, and Omni-Man asks him a question. He asks, "What will you have in 500 years?" The question is about the futility of human relationships from a Viltrumite perspective. Humans die. Viltrumites do not. Everything Mark loves will decay. Omni-Man is asking his son to accept this and to stop fighting. And Mark, with his jaw broken and his eyes swollen shut and his body shattered, answers. He says, "You, Dad. I would still have you." And Omni-Man stops. He stops hitting his son. He stops the argument. He flies away. He leaves Earth. The brutality of this moment is not in the beating. It is in the fact that love is what ends it. A boy too broken to stand finds the one thing that can stop the most powerful being on the planet. And it is not a punch. It is a sentence. And the sentence breaks Omni-Man more thoroughly than any fist ever could. And the beating itself requires one more look, because the choreography tells a story that the dialogue cannot. The fight between Nolan and Mark in Episode 8 is not choreographed like a fight. It is choreographed like an argument. Nolan's punches are declarative. Each one is a sentence. Each one says, "You are wrong. You are weak. You do not understand." The punches come in combinations that feel like paragraphs of violence. A jab to the face that says, "Listen to me." A cross to the body that says, "I have been patient." An uppercut that lifts Mark off the ground and says, "I am done being patient." Mark's attempts to fight back are choreographed as responses. A block that says, "I hear you." A counter that says, "I disagree." A desperate tackle that says, "I will not accept your premise." And the fight reads like a conversation conducted in a language that both of them understand. The language of force, the language of Viltrumite persuasion, where the strongest argument is the one that leaves the other person on the ground. Nolan wins the argument. He wins every exchange. He wins by such a wide margin that the fight is less a contest than a correction. A father correcting a son. An elder correcting a younger. The most powerful being on the planet correcting the second most powerful being on the planet, and the correction is being written on Mark's body in bruises and breaks and blood. But Mark does not concede. Mark does not accept a correction. Mark refuses to learn the lesson his father is teaching, not because he is too stupid to learn, but because the lesson is wrong. The lesson is that human life is meaningless. Mark knows it is not. And his refusal, delivered from a shattered body on a mountainside with his jaw broken and his eyes swollen, is the first time in the series that the show tells the audience what invincible actually means. It does not mean that Mark cannot be broken. It means that Mark cannot be convinced. The body breaks. The will does not. The blood flows. The conviction holds. And the father, the undefeated warrior, the conqueror of worlds, flies away because he lost the argument. He won every punch. He lost the conversation. And the loss is so devastating that he leaves the planet rather than face what it means. The 8th brutal moment takes place in Season 2, Episode 1. The Immortal returns. The Immortal is a character who cannot die permanently. He regenerates. He has lived for thousands of years. Omni-Man killed him in the Guardians Massacre, decapitating him and punching through his torso. The Immortal's body was recovered. His head was reattached. He healed. And in Season 2, Episode 1, the first thing the Immortal does upon returning is fly directly at Omni-Man and attack him. The fight is short. The Immortal is angry and powerful, and he does not care about strategy. He wants revenge. And Omni-Man catches him mid-flight, grabs him by the arm, and tears him in half, vertically. From shoulder to hip, the Immortal is ripped into two pieces while his wife watches from the ground below. The brutality, as always in this show, is in the casualness. Omni-Man does not struggle. He does not strain. He tears a man in half the way you would tear a piece of paper, and then he drops both halves and flies away. The Immortal survives because the Immortal always survives. But the image of a man torn in half and falling to earth in two pieces while his wife screams is one that the show never lets you forget. The ninth moment belongs to Mark and Angstrom Levy. Season 2, Episode 4. Angstrom Levy is a villain who can open portals between dimensions. He kidnaps Debbie Grayson and baby Oliver. He takes them to an alternate dimension. Mark follows. The fight that ensues takes Mark through dozens of alternate realities in rapid succession. He is thrown through portals into worlds where everything is different. Dinosaur worlds, underwater worlds, worlds made of fire. Each transition is violent. Each landing causes damage. But the brutal moment comes at the end of the fight. Mark gets his hands on Angstrom Levy. Mark has seen his mother threatened. He has seen his baby brother in danger, and the anger takes over. Mark punches Angstrom Levy in the face, and then he punches him again and again, and the camera holds on Mark's fist rising and falling. The sound design becomes rhythmic. Wet impact after wet impact, Angstrom Levy's face deforms with each hit. His features flatten, his skull changes shape. Mark does not stop. The anger is bigger than his self-control, and the punching continues until Angstrom Levy's face is no longer recognizable as a face. It is a topography of broken bone and torn skin, and blood. Mark stops only when the body beneath him stops moving, and then Mark looks at his hands. His hands are covered in blood, his face is covered in blood, and the expression on his face is not relief or triumph. It is horror. It is the expression of a person who has just discovered that they are capable of beating another person to death with their bare hands, and that the capability was always there, waiting, and that the trigger was love. He beat Angstrom Levy to death because Angstrom Levy threatened the people Mark loves. The violence was born from love, and that is the most brutal thing about it. There is something worth noting about the way Mark processes this fight in the episodes that follow. The show gives Mark what amounts to a trauma response. He becomes quieter, he second-guesses his own reactions. He catches himself in moments of anger and pulls back, not because the anger is inappropriate, but because the anger reminds him of what he did to Angstrom Levy. And what he did to Angstrom Levy reminds him of what his father did to the Guardians. And the resemblance is the thing Mark cannot tolerate. The show draws a direct line between Nolan's violence and Mark's violence. The line is genetic, it is cultural, it is the inheritance that Mark cannot refuse. When Mark beat Angstrom Levy to death, he was not just committing an act of violence. He was confirming a hypothesis. The hypothesis is that Viltrumite blood carries Viltrumite behavior, that the capacity for extreme violence is not learned but inherited. That the thing Mark saw his father do to the Guardians and to the people on the train is the thing that lives inside Mark too, dormant, waiting for the right trigger, and the trigger turned out to be love. Mark loves his mother. Mark loves his brother. Mark loves the people Angstrom Levy threatened. And the love activated the violence. And the violence was Viltrumite violence. And the Viltrumite violence does not have a dimmer switch. It does moderate. It does not calibrate to the appropriate level of response. It goes to maximum. And maximum for a Viltrumite means beating a man's face into an unrecognizable topography of bone and blood and fluid. The question the show asks after the Angstrom Levy fight is not whether Mark will be violent again. The question is whether Mark can learn to be violent in a way that does not destroy the thing the violence was meant to protect. Can the Viltrumite fist learn to hold back? Can the inherited rage learn to operate at half power? Can the son be different from the father when the son's blood is the father's blood and the blood remembers what the blood was built to do? The 10th brutal moment is quieter but cuts deeper. Season 2. Mark returns from the Angstrom Levy fight covered in blood that is not his own. He goes home. His mother sees him. His girlfriend sees him. The people who love him see what he has done, not because he tells them, but because the evidence is on his skin and in his eyes, and in the way he stands, which is the way a person stands when they are carrying something they cannot put down. The brutality here is not in the violence itself. It is in the distance the violence creates between Mark and the people who care about him. They look at him and they see what he is capable of. He looks at them and he knows they see it. And the thing they see cannot be unseen. This is a recurring pattern in Invincible. The show is as interested in the aftermath of violence as it is in the violence itself. The punch is one scene. The consequences of the punch are 10 scenes. The blood washes off. The knowledge does not. The 11th brutal moment belongs to a character most people underestimate. Season 2, D.A. Sinclair, the man who makes Reanimen. The show introduces Sinclair as a college student and transforms them into cybernetic soldiers. The process is depicted in detail. Living human beings are strapped to tables. Their limbs are removed and replaced with mechanical components. Their brains are altered. Their autonomy is erased. They become weapons that walk and fight and bleed but do not think. The brutality is not in the surgery, it is in the ethics. Cecil Stedman, the head of the Global Defense Agency, discovers what Sinclair is doing. He arrests him, and then he hires him. Cecil takes a man who kidnaps college students and turns them into cyborg soldiers and gives him a government laboratory and a budget. The Reanimen become a government program. The bodies of dead soldiers and criminals are repurposed into weapons. The brutality is institutional. It is the moment when the show says that the most violent acts are not committed by supervillains in capes. They are committed by men in suits who sign forms and authorize budgets and call the results national security. The 12th moment of brutality arrives in Season 2 when Oliver, Mark's half-brother, begins to reveal what he is. Oliver is half Viltrumite, half Thraxan. He ages rapidly. He grows from an infant to a child in months. And the first time Oliver fights, the audience sees something they are not prepared for. Oliver does not hold back. He does not understand the concept of holding back. When Oliver encounters the Mauler twins, he does not restrain himself the way Mark would. He punches through one of them. His small fist enters the body on one side and exits on the other. The Mauler twins' torso explodes outward. Organs and viscera spray across the scene. And then Oliver turns to the second Mauler twin and punches upward through the bottom of his jaw with enough force to split the man's skull from chin to crown. The eyes pop from the sockets. The brain is visible. A child did this. A child who looks approximately 10 years old. The brutality is not just in the violence. It is in the age of the person committing it. Oliver kills with no hesitation and no remorse because Oliver was not raised in a world that taught him restraint. He was raised by a Viltrumite. He learned that the strong survive. And when the strong are also children, the violence they commit carries a different kind of horror. And the Oliver scene raises a question about nature and nurture that the show never stops asking. Oliver was raised by Nolan for the brief time they were together on Thraxis. Nolan, even in his reformed state, even in his attempt to be a better person, is a Viltrumite. His instincts are Viltrumite instincts. His responses to threat are Viltrumite responses. And Oliver absorbed these instincts in the way that children absorb everything, without filter, without context, without the moderating influence of a human upbringing that teaches restraint and proportion, and the idea that killing is a last resort rather than a first response. Oliver kills the Mauler twins because Oliver does not know that killing is wrong. Not in the way Mark knows. Mark was raised by Debbie. Mark went to school. Mark had friends. Mark learned the social contract, the unspoken agreement that governs human behavior. The agreement that says you do not use maximum force in every situation. Oliver was raised on a planet where maximum force was survival. Oliver was raised by a man whose default response to threat is elimination. And when Oliver encounters the Mauler twins, his body does what his father's body would do. It eliminates the threat, completely, permanently, messily. The gore is the statement. The blood on the walls is the argument. The 10-year-old boy standing in the center of two destroyed bodies with no expression of guilt or horror on his face is the thesis. Nature wins. Or more precisely, nature wins unless nurture intervenes early enough and consistently enough to redirect the inherited response. Mark had 20 years of nurture. Oliver had months. The difference is measured in corpses. The 13th moment takes us to the Sequids. Season 2, the Sequids are parasitic organisms from Mars that attach to human hosts and take control of their bodies. They arrive on Earth in a contained specimen that was brought back by the space mission that included the astronaut Russ Livingston. The containment fails. The Sequids spread. They attach to people and the people become puppets, their bodies moving in coordinated swarms controlled by a hive intelligence. The brutal moment is not the initial outbreak, it is the response. Mark fights the Sequid-controlled humans and realizes that every host he hits is a person. A living person with a family and a name and a history trapped inside their own body while an alien parasite drives them like a vehicle. The violence Mark commits to stop the swarm is violence against victims, not villains. Every punch lands on a human face. Every body that falls is a person who was going about their day when something attached to the back of their neck and stole their will. The show does not offer Mark a clean solution. There is no way to save the hosts without hurting them. There is no way to stop the swarm without breaking the bodies it is wearing. The brutality is moral. It is the brutality of a situation where every possible action causes harm and inaction causes more harm, and the person forced to choose is 18 years old and terrified. The 14th moment belongs to Cecil and the lengths he will go. Season 2, Cecil deploys a weapon against a threat that requires extreme measures. The weapon is D.A. Sinclair's Reanimin, the cybernetic corpse soldiers. They are sent into combat and they fight and they are destroyed, piece by piece, and the camera lingers on the dismemberment because the show wants you to remember that these machines used to be people. A Reanimin loses an arm and the arm has human skin stretched over the metal. A Reanimin's head is torn off and the face underneath the visor is a young man's face, a college student's face, a face that once had a name. The brutality is in Cecil's willingness to use them. He sends the dead to fight for the living, and he does not lose sleep over it. And the show asks you to decide whether that makes him a monster or a pragmatist. And the answer it suggests is that the question itself might be the most brutal thing about the entire situation. The 15th moment is the death of a world that no one will remember. Season 1. When Omni-Man destroys the Flaxen dimension, the show pauses long enough to show what existed before the destruction. Cities, infrastructure, children. The Flaxens are aliens who invaded Earth, and the show gives the audience permission to view them as enemies. But in the sequence where Omni-Man burns their world, there are shots of Flaxen civilians running. There are shots of buildings that are clearly residential. There is a shot, lasting approximately 2 seconds, of a Flaxen adult holding a smaller Flaxen in a gesture that is unmistakably protective. A parent holding a child. And then the fire reaches them. The show does not show the death. It does not need to. The 2-second shot of the parent and child is enough. It transforms the Flaxen genocide from an impressive display of power into an atrocity. One frame, one parent, one child, and the entire moral calculus of the scene inverts. The 16th moment of brutality is the Darkwing replacement. Season 2. The Global Defense Agency decides that the Darkwing identity should continue. A new person takes up the mantle. Darkwing 2. The original Darkwing was a man with training and gadgets and decades of experience. Darkwing 2 is given the same equipment and sent into the field, and the show uses him to demonstrate what happens when you give a man a cape and send him to fight gods. Darkwing 2 encounters threats that are beyond his capability. He is beaten, he is broken, he survives but barely, and the show makes clear that the government considers him expendable. The brutality is bureaucratic. It is the violence of treating human beings as interchangeable components in a machine. The original Darkwing died because Omni-Man killed him. Darkwing 2 will die because someone in an office decided that the brand was worth more than the person wearing it. The 17th moment is one of the show's most psychologically devastating. Season 2. Debbie Grayson, Mark's mother, sits in her kitchen. She is alone. Her husband, the man she loved for 20 years, has revealed himself to be a genocidal alien soldier. He has beaten their son nearly to death. He has killed hundreds of civilians. He has left Earth, and Debbie is sitting in her kitchen with a glass of wine, and then the glass is empty, and then the bottle is empty, and then there is another bottle. The brutality is not physical. There is no punch. There is no blood. There is a woman drinking alone in a kitchen that used to be full of a family, and the silence in the room is louder than any fight scene the show has ever produced. Debbie's descent into alcoholism is depicted with a restraint that makes it more painful to watch than any broken bone. The show does not sensationalize her suffering. It observes it. It sits with her in the kitchen and watches her drink and does not comment. The violence that Omni-Man committed has reached his wife through the walls, through the distance, through the months of aftermath, and it has found her in her kitchen, and it is destroying her without touching her. And it is worth pausing here to consider what the show is doing with Debbie across all 4 seasons, because Debbie Grayson might be the show's most brutalized character, and none of the brutality is physical until the broken hand. Debbie's brutality is emotional. It is domestic. It is the violence that happens in kitchens and bedrooms and conversations and silences. Nolan's betrayal is a physical violence directed at the world, but it is an emotional violence directed at Debbie. He lied to her for 20 years. He pretended to be a person he was not. He built a family on a foundation of deception so total that every memory Debbie has of their marriage is contaminated by it. Every date, every kiss, every morning waking up next to a man she thought she knew, all of it was part of an operation. All of it was cover. And Debbie has to live with the knowledge that the love she felt was real, but the person she felt it for was a construct. a performance, a character played by an alien soldier who was using her life as a staging ground for conquest. The brutality is in the retroactive destruction. Nolan's betrayal does not just destroy the present, it destroys the past. It reaches backward through 20 years of memory and poisons every moment. The dinner on their anniversary, the hospital when Mark was born, the quiet evenings on the couch. All of it is reframed. All of it becomes evidence of a lie. And Debbie has to carry the poisoned memories inside a body that cannot process them, inside a mind that is not equipped for betrayal on this scale, inside a life that was built on a foundation that was never there. The alcoholism is the honest part. The alcoholism is Debbie's body telling the truth that her mind cannot organize. The bottles accumulate. The mornings get harder. The functioning gets less functional. And the show depicts the decline with a precision that suggests someone in the writer's room understands addiction not as a dramatic device, but as a lived experience. Debbie does not drink dramatically. She does not throw bottles against walls. She does not deliver drunken monologues. She drinks the way people actually drink when they are trying to survive something that cannot be survived through sober processing. She drinks quietly. She drinks at home. She drinks enough to erase them because the memories resist erasure, because the memories are Viltrumite in their durability, because nothing about Nolan's legacy can be destroyed easily, not even the damage he left behind. The 18th moment belongs to Battle Beast. Season 1, Episode 5. Battle Beast arrives on Earth through circumstances related to Machine Head's criminal operation. Mark and the new Guardians engage him. The fight lasts less than a minute. Battle Beast dismantles the entire team with an efficiency that borders on contempt. He breaks bones with single strikes, he tears through defenses like paper, he picks up Black Samson and throws him through a wall. He catches Shrinking Ray mid-attack and slams her into the ground. He fights Mark one-on-one, and Mark lands nothing. Every punch Mark throws is caught or deflected or ignored. Battle Beast hits Mark once, twice, 3 times, and each hit sends Mark flying through structures. The final blow leaves Mark unconscious and bleeding on the ground. Battle Beast looks at his fallen opponents and his expression is disappointment. He wanted a fight. He got target practice. The brutality is in the mismatch. The audience has been watching Mark grow into his powers for 5 episodes. Mark is getting stronger. Mark is learning, and Battle Beast arrives and demonstrates that the power scale Mark has been climbing is a foothill compared to the mountain that exists above him. Mark is nothing to Battle Beast. And the ease with which Battle Beast proves this is more brutal than any individual injury he inflicts. The 19th moment is Season 2, Episode 3. The college attack. Mark is at Upstate University when a villain attacks the campus. Students are caught in the crossfire. The show depicts the chaos through the perspective of bystanders who cannot fly and cannot survive a punch that would collapse a car. A student is hit by debris and falls. Another student is pinned under rubble. The camera follows their experience, not Mark's. For 30 seconds, the show abandons its protagonist and stays with the people on the ground. The people who did not choose to be in this story. The people whose only crime is proximity. The brutality is in the framing. By choosing to show the violence from below, from the perspective of the vulnerable, the show transforms a superhero fight into a disaster. It is an earthquake with a name. A hurricane that makes decisions. The students on the ground do not know why this is happening. They do not know who is fighting whom. They only know that the sky is falling and the ground is shaking, and the world they thought was safe has turned into something that can kill them without noticing. The 20th moment is the reveal of what Omni-Man did on Thraxis. Season 2, we learn that after leaving Earth, Nolan traveled to the planet Thraxis. He found a civilization of insect-like beings with extremely short lifespans. He lived among them. He took a partner. He had a child, Oliver. And then the Viltrumite Empire found him. They sent soldiers. And Nolan fought, but the Thraxans were fragile. Their bodies delicate, their lifespans measured in months rather than decades. The battle was a slaughter. Thraxan soldiers attacked the Viltrumites with weapons designed for beings of their own durability, and the weapons did nothing. Thraxan bodies broke against Viltrumite skin. The ground was covered in wings and shells and the translucent fluid that passes for Thraxan blood. Nolan could not protect them. He tried. He fought the Viltrumite soldiers, but there were too many Thraxans and they were too fragile, and the Viltrumites did not distinguish between combatants and civilians. The brutality is in the fragility. The Thraxans are the show's most explicit statement about what superhero violence looks like from the perspective of normal biology. They are humans, abstracted. They are what humans are to Viltrumites, temporary, breakable, and easily forgotten. The 21st brutal moment belongs to a man named Steven, not a superhero, not a villain, a man on a train. Season 1, Episode 8, when Omni-Man shoves Mark through the subway train, The show inserts a shot of a single passenger. He is reading a newspaper. He has approximately half a second of awareness before Mark's body, propelled by Omni-Man's strength, travels through the train car. The man's expression changes, he begins to react, and then the impact reaches him and the reaction never completes. The show holds on this man for less than a second. He is never named, he is never mentioned again. But the animators gave him a face and an expression and a newspaper and a life that was happening before the train arrived at the wrong station at the wrong time. The brutality is in the specificity. Invincible could have shown the train deaths as a blur. Instead, it showed one face, one man, one newspaper. And that single face represents every nameless civilian who has ever died in a superhero story without being given the courtesy of a name. The 22nd moment of brutality occurs in Season 3, Episode 2. Mark confronts Titan again, and the context has changed. Titan used Mark in Season 1, manipulated him into helping take down Machine Head so that Titan could take over the criminal empire himself. Now, Titan is a crime lord, and the encounter between him and Mark is charged with the knowledge that Mark helped create this problem. The fight is messy and emotional. Mark fights angry, Titan fights desperate. The collateral damage is worse than their first encounter because both of them are stronger now, and both of them are less careful. A building collapses, people are inside. The dust cloud fills 6 city blocks, and the show does not let Mark look away from it. The camera stays on Mark's face as he hears the building fall, and his expression is not anger at Titan, it is shame. The building fell because Mark was punching someone through its support columns. The building fell because Mark forgot, in his anger, that the building existed, that the people inside existed. The brutality is in the forgetting. The most dangerous thing about superpowers is not the capacity for destruction. It is the capacity to stop noticing the destruction. The 23rd moment belongs to Rexplode and the thing he becomes before the thing he does. Season 3. Rexplode starts the series as a joke. An arrogant, shallow, selfish person who cheats on his girlfriend and makes bad decisions and treats heroism like a brand. And the show spends 3 seasons quietly disassembling that persona, revealing the abuse underneath it, the government experiments that gave him his powers, the childhood that was stolen, the person inside the armor who is afraid and damaged and trying. The brutality is not his death, though his death is coming. The brutality is the show's patience in making you care about a character introduced as disposable. The show takes its time, it lets Rex grow, it lets him make better choices, it lets him fall in love with Shrinking Ray and mean it. It lets him become someone worth mourning. And the reason this is brutal is because the show is building a weapon. It is constructing the emotional payload that will detonate in Episode 7. Every kind moment Rex is given, every small act of growth, every scene where he is gentle or brave or selfless, is ammunition. The show is loading the gun, and it is pointing it directly at the audience. The 24th moment is the Invincible War. Season 3, Episode 7. Angstrom Levy, who survived the beating Mark gave him in Season 2, returns with an army. Not a conventional army, an army of alternate universe Marks. Dozens of them. Each one a version of Invincible from a different reality. Each one corrupted or broken or turned to evil. They descend on cities around the world simultaneously. The global attack is coordinated and devastating. Buildings fall, bridges collapse. The alternate Marks fight with the same powers as the original Mark, but without his restraint, without his conscience, without the thing that makes him hold back. They kill civilians without hesitation. They destroy infrastructure without pause. The brutality is in the mirror. The audience has spent 3 seasons watching Mark Grayson try to be good, try to use his powers responsibly, try to protect people. And now the show puts dozens of versions of him on screen who have failed at that project, who have given in to the violence, who have become the thing Mark is afraid of becoming. The alternate Marks are what happens when the leash breaks. They are proof that the restraint Mark exercises is not permanent. It is a choice, made fresh every time, and the alternate Marks have simply made a different choice. And their choice has leveled cities. And there is something else about the Invincible War that the show handles with a subtlety that deserves recognition. The alternate Marks are not portrayed as monsters. They are not cackling villains. They are not evil in the way that cartoon villains are evil, with speeches and grand plans and theatrical gestures. The alternate Marks are tired. Some of them are angry. Some of them are broken. Some of them look like they have been fighting for so long that they no longer remember what they are fighting for. And the show gives the audience just enough information about each alternate Mark to understand that each one was, at some point, a version of the Mark the audience knows. Each one had a Debbie, each one had an Amber, each one had a William. Each one lived in a world that was recognizable. And something went wrong, and the wrong thing was different for each of them, and the different wrong things produced the same result. violence without restraint. The alternate marks are a statistical argument. They are the show saying, this is what happens most of the time. Most versions of Mark Grayson do not become heroes. Most versions of Mark Grayson are broken by the things the show puts him through. The Mark that the audience knows, the Mark who resists, the Mark who holds back, the Mark who chooses not to become what his blood tells him to become, is the exception. He is the outlier. He is the 1 in 50 who made a different choice, and the other 49 are on screen right now, destroying cities, and the audience cannot look at them without seeing the Mark they know. And the resemblance is the cruelty. The Invincible War also deserves mention for what it does to the supporting cast. The alternate Marks do not only fight Mark, they fight everyone. They attack cities around the world simultaneously. The Guardians of the Globe, the new team that has been struggling to fill the void left by the original team's massacre, are spread across the planet trying to contain the damage. And they are outmatched. Every member of the Guardians is outmatched by a single alternate Mark, because every alternate Mark has the same powers as the original, and the original is stronger than any individual Guardian. The Guardians fight anyway. They fight knowing they cannot win. They fight because the alternative is letting civilians die, and the show rewards their courage with injuries. Monster Girl is beaten until her regeneration can barely keep up. Robot's mechanical body is torn apart. Bulletproof is thrown through buildings. The Guardians bleed and break and continue fighting, because that is what heroes do in this world. They absorb damage, they absorb consequences, they absorb the violence that would otherwise reach the civilians behind them. And the absorption is the heroism. And the heroism is painful. And the pain is the point. The 25th moment is the detonation. Season 3, Episode 7. The Invincible War is raging. An alternate Mark has cornered Rexplode, Monster Girl, and Robot in a building. Rex tells the others to go. He says he will hold the line. The others argue. Rex insists. They leave. And Rexplode, the character who started the series as a punchline, reaches into the wound on his side. He touches his own rib. His power allows him to charge any inorganic material with kinetic energy, turning it into an explosive. But bones are not inorganic. Bones are alive. They should not be chargeable. And yet Rex reaches inside himself and charges his own skeleton, and the screen goes white. The explosion kills the alternate Mark. It kills Rex. The camera cuts to a wide shot of the building detonating, seen from blocks away, and Billie Eilish's "When the Party's Over" begins to play. The shot holds. The dust settles. Rexplode is gone. The brutality is not in the explosion. It is in the reach. The physical act of a man putting his hand inside his own body and grasping his own bone and deciding that the bone is what he has left to give. The brutality is in the sacrifice being literal. Rex did not throw himself on a grenade. He turned himself into a grenade. He made his body the weapon because his body was the last weapon he had. And the show had spent 3 seasons making you care about the body he detonated. The Rexplode death scene requires one additional examination because the show does something technically remarkable with it that most viewers absorb without consciously noticing. The scene is almost entirely silent. The actual explosion is preceded by approximately 8 seconds of quiet. Rex reaches into his wound. The camera holds on his face. His expression is not heroic determination. It is not grim resolve. It is the expression of a person who is doing math. Rex is calculating. He is calculating whether the charge in his bones will be enough. He is calculating the blast radius. He is calculating how much time the others need to get clear. The math is the last thing Rexplode does. The man who started the series as a joke about shallow bravado ends the series doing arithmetic in his head while holding his own rib and knowing that the answer to the equation is his death. And the show gives him silence for those calculations. No music, no dialogue, no sound effects. Just the sound of Rex breathing and the faint, almost inaudible hum of kinetic energy charging through calcium and collagen and the minerals that make up a human skeleton. Then the white, then the wide shot, then the song. The sequence from silence to explosion to song takes approximately 15 seconds. And in those 15 seconds, the show accomplishes something that most narrative television cannot accomplish in entire seasons. It makes you grieve a person you used to find annoying. It makes the grief feel earned. It makes the death feel necessary and wrong simultaneously. It makes you understand that the show killed Rexplode not because it ran out of ideas for his character, but because his character had arrived at the only possible destination that 3 seasons of careful patient development could produce. Rexplode was always going to explode. The show just spent 3 seasons making sure you would feel it when he did. And the Billie Eilish needle drop is worth mentioning specifically because the show earns it. When the Party's Over is a song about endings. It is a song about knowing something is over and watching it end and not being able to stop the ending. The lyrics, which the show uses instrumentally rather than vocally in the initial moments, describe the experience of standing in the aftermath of something that was alive and is now finished. The choice to play it over the wide shot of the explosion, over the settling dust, over the silence where Rex used to be, is a directorial decision that transforms the death from a plot point into an emotional event. The audience does not just witness Rex's death, the audience mourns it. The music gives them permission to mourn. The music says this was a person. This person's mattered. This person's absence will be felt. And the show holds on the wide shot long enough for the mourning to begin, long enough for the audience to understand that Rex is not coming back, long enough for the finality to settle. And then the scene ends, and the mourning continues in the space between the screen and the audience, in the place where television lives after you stop watching. The 26th moment is the funeral. Season 3, Episode 8. Rex Splode's funeral is attended by the remaining Guardians. The show gives the funeral time, it does not rush through it to get to the next fight. The camera holds on faces. Shrinking Ray is there. Monster Girl is there. Robot is there, though what Robot feels is a question the show leaves deliberately ambiguous. The burial is shown. The casket is lowered, and the brutality is in the absence. There is nothing in the casket. Rex detonated his entire body. There is no body to bury. The funeral is for a box of nothing, and the people standing around the box know this, and they are mourning anyway, because the box represents the person and the person is gone, and the grief does not require a body to attach to. It attaches to the memory, it attaches to the empty space where the arrogant, difficult, ultimately heroic man used to stand. The 27th moment is the arrival of Conquest, Season 3, Episode 8. Conquest is a Viltrumite warrior sent to evaluate Earth's readiness for takeover. He is older than Nolan. He is larger than Nolan. He has one arm, having lost the other in a battle so severe that even a Viltrumite could not regenerate the limb. His remaining arm is replaced with a mechanical prosthesis. Conquest arrives on Earth, and he does not announce himself, he does not make threats, he does not deliver speeches. He attacks. The first thing he does is hit Mark. The hit sends Mark through multiple buildings. The impact craters are measured in city blocks. And the fight begins. The Conquest fight is widely considered the most brutal extended sequence in the entire series. It spans the final act of Episode 8 and continues into the finale. The animation quality escalates. The frame rate increases during impact moments. The sound design shifts from the show's usual crisp impacts to something deeper, something that vibrates in the chest. Every hit between Mark and Conquest sounds like a building being demolished from the inside, because that is what is happening to their bodies. And the Conquest fight deserves to be understood in the context of what the show has been building toward for 3 seasons. Every fight in Invincible has escalated. Season 1's fights are brutal but survivable. Season 2's fights are more damaging, more consequential. Season 3's Conquest fight is where the escalation reaches its apex, where the show stops holding back and commits fully to depicting what a fight between Viltrumite-level beings would actually look like if the animation matched the physics. The answer is, it would look like a natural disaster with fists. The craters left by Mark and Conquest's impacts are measured in city blocks. The shockwaves from their punches shatter windows for miles. The fight moves across continents because neither combatant can be stopped by geography. Mountains do not stop them. Oceans do not slow them. The planet itself is their arena, and the planet is taking damage, and the show makes you see the damage. It makes you see the buildings folding. It makes you see the cars flipping. It makes you see the ground deforming beneath the weight of impacts that carry the force of bomb detonations. And somewhere in the midst of all this planetary-scale destruction, 2 people are fighting for reasons that are deeply, painfully personal. Mark is fighting because his home is being threatened. Conquest is fighting because fighting is what he was made for. The scale is cosmic. The motivation is intimate. And the gap between the two is the space where the brutality lives. The animation team has spoken about the Conquest fight in interviews. They have described the process of rendering the impacts, of deciding how much detail to include in the gore, of calibrating the balance between spectacle and horror. They have said that the fight took longer to animate than any other sequence in the series. They have said that individual frames were reviewed dozens of times to ensure that the violence read as visceral rather than cartoonish. The distinction matters. Cartoonish violence is weightless. It bounces, it stretches, it obeys the logic of exaggeration. Visceral violence has mass. It deforms. It leaves marks. It follows the logic of consequence. The Conquest fight is animated with visceral logic. When Conquest's fist hits Mark's face deforms the way a face deforms when it is hit by something that weighs several tons moving at several hundred miles per hour. The skin compresses. The bone beneath the skin flexes. The blood vessels beneath the bone rupture. The blood exits the body through every available opening. The animators researched impact physics. They studied slow motion footage of collisions. They applied the research to the animation, and the result is a fight scene that does not look like a cartoon fight scene. It looks like a document. It looks like evidence. It looks like what would actually happen if two beings with the power of gods decided to kill each other in a populated area. And the populated area was Earth. The 28th moment is what Conquest does to Eve. Season 3, Episode 8. Adam Eve arrives to help Mark fight Conquest. She uses her matter manipulation powers to slow Conquest down, to create barriers to restructure the battlefield. But Conquest is too strong and too fast and too experienced. He catches Eve. The first blow rips half her face from her skull. The animation holds on the injury. The skin peels away from the bone. The eye on the damaged side goes dark. Eve is alive and conscious, and her face is half gone. The second blow is worse. Conquest punches through Eve's torso. His fist enters her stomach and exits through her back. Eve's internal organs are visible. Her intestines spill forward. Her body folds around the arm that has impaled her, and the show holds on this image for 5 seconds. 5 seconds of a woman impaled on a fist, her body broken open, her organs exposed, her remaining eyes still conscious, still aware, still processing what is happening. Eve falls. The show implies death. Mark sees it happen. And the anger that follows is not human anger, it is Viltrumite anger. It is the ancient boundless thermonuclear rage of a species bred for war. And Mark has been holding it back for 3 seasons, and Eve's death is the thing that stops the holding. The 29th moment is what Mark does to Conquest after Eve falls. Season 3. Mark attacks Conquest with a ferocity that transcends anything the show has depicted. He does not fight like a hero. He does not fight like a person. He fights like a mechanism that has been activated. His arms are broken, his legs are barely functional, his ribs are shattered. And he keeps hitting. He grabs Conquest's head and slams it into the ground. He slams it again. Again, the ground craters with each impact. Conquest fights back. He rips Mark open. He tears at Mark's intestines, pulling them through a wound in Mark's abdomen. Mark screams. The sound is not a battle cry. It is a scream of agony, pure and unmediated. The sound a body makes when it is being dismantled while the consciousness inside it refuses to shut down. And Mark keeps fighting. He keeps slamming Conquest's head into the ground. The ground is red. Conquest's face is deforming. The prosthetic arm breaks. Conquest's natural arm breaks. And Mark keeps going until Conquest stops moving. The final shot of the fight shows Mark kneeling over Conquest's body. Mark is covered in blood. Some of it is his, some of it is Conquest's, some of it is Eve's. The distinction no longer matters. The blood has mixed. The violence has mixed. The people have mixed. And Mark is kneeling in the center of the mixture, and he is alive, and the thing he has done to stay alive is something he will carry for the rest of the series. The 30th moment is Eve's resurrection. Season 3. Eve is dead. Her body is broken. Her organs are exposed. Her face is half destroyed. And then her powers activate. The mental blocks that have constrained Adam Eve's abilities since childhood, the blocks installed by the government to prevent her from manipulating organic matter, are removed by the trauma of death. Her body begins to glow. The matter around her begins to shift. Her organs retreat back into her body. Her skin regrows. Her face reconstructs itself cell by cell, the animation depicting the reconstruction in a way that is simultaneously beautiful and deeply unsettling because the process of healing is depicted with the same graphic specificity as the process of injury. You see the muscle fibers reconnecting. You see the skin stretching over the rebuilt tissue. You see the eye regenerate in its socket. Eve is rebuilt from the inside out, and the process looks less like healing and more like birth, like the construction of a new person from the raw materials of the old one. The brutality is in the beauty. The show makes resurrection look exactly as violent as death, because it is. The cells are torn apart and reassembled. The body is destroyed and rebuilt. The process is painful. Eve screams during the reconstruction. She screams, and her screaming is the sound of a body being unmade and remade simultaneously. She lives, she survives, but the version of Eve that stands up after the reconstruction is not the version that fell. Something has changed. Something fundamental. The blocks are gone, the limits are gone, and the woman who stands up from her own death is more powerful than she was before, and the power was purchased with the most brutal currency the show has to offer. And there is a larger point about Eve's resurrection that connects to the show's thesis about violence and transformation. The show is arguing that power, true power, the kind of power that can reshape reality and rebuild a broken body from its component atoms, is not given freely. It is purchased, and the currency is suffering. Eve's full powers activate only when she dies. The mental blocks that constrain her can only be removed by the trauma of death itself. which means that the most powerful version of Adam Eve, the version that can manipulate organic matter, the version that can theoretically reshape any living thing at the molecular level, is a version that has been killed and rebuilt. The power comes after the death. The gift comes after the price. And the price is not metaphorical. It is not a lesson learned through hardship. It is literal death, literal destruction of the body, literal exposure of internal organs, literal cessation of biological function. Eve had to die to become what she was always capable of being, and the dying was Conquest's fist through her torso, and the becoming was her body glowing and reassembling while she screamed. This pattern repeats throughout Invincible. Growth comes through damage. Strength comes through destruction. The characters do not become better versions of themselves through wisdom or reflection or positive experience. They become better versions of themselves through being broken and rebuilt. Mark becomes a better hero by being beaten nearly to death by his father. Rex becomes a selfless person by detonating his own skeleton. Debbie becomes a stronger woman by surviving alcoholism brought on by betrayal. The show's theory of human development is that we are forged in the furnace, not in the garden. We do not grow toward the light. We grow through the dark, through the damage, through the violence that breaks us into pieces small enough to be reassembled into something new. And the reassembly hurts. The reassembly always hurts. Eve screams while she is rebuilt. Rex screams while he detonates. Mark screams while his father beats him. The screaming is the sound of growth, and growth in this show is indistinguishable from suffering. And the show asks whether that is a tragedy or simply the truth, and the answer it suggests is yes, both. It is tragic and true simultaneously, and the simultaneity is the most brutal thing in the entire series. The 31st moment of brutality is what happens to Conquest's body after the fight. Season 3. Mark has beaten Conquest. Conquest is dead, and the Global Defense Agency arrives and takes the body, and the body disappears into a government facility, and the show does not tell you what happens to it. But DA Sinclair works for the government, and DA Sinclair turns bodies into reanimin. The implication is never stated. The show trusts the audience to make the connection. A Viltrumite body, the most durable organic material in the known universe, in the hands of a man who builds cybernetic weapons from corpses. The brutality is in the silence. The show does not confirm what happens. It does not need to. The absence of information is the information. And the audience is left to sit with the knowledge that the government has likely turned a dead Viltrumite into a weapon. Because that is what the government does in this show. It takes bodies and makes them useful. It takes death and makes it productive. The assembly line does not stop for ethics. It does not stop for anything. The 30-second moment belongs to the Viltrumite War, Season 4. The coalition of planets makes its stand against the Viltrumite Empire. The battle takes place in space and on the surface of Viltrum itself. Mark is part of the coalition forces. Nolan is part of the coalition forces. They fight side by side for the first time since Nolan nearly killed Mark in Season 1. And the fight is a catastrophe. Viltrumite warriors tear through coalition soldiers like paper. The show depicts the disparity with clinical precision. A coalition ship fires its weapons. The weapons hit a Viltrumite warrior. The warrior does not flinch. The warrior flies through the ship. The ship detonates. The crew of the ship is visible in the explosion for a fraction of a second. Tumbling bodies silhouetted against the fireball. Another Viltrumite engages a squad of coalition ground troops. The ground troops fire their weapons. The Viltrumite closes the distance in under a second and punches through the first soldier's chest and uses the body as a shield against the remaining fire, and then drops the body and kills the rest. The brutality is systematic. The Viltrumites do not fight with anger or passion. They fight with efficiency. They have been doing this for thousands of years. The killing is a profession. It is a trade skill, and the show makes clear that the gap between Viltrumite power and the rest of the galaxy is not a gap that can be closed with courage or technology or numbers. It can only be closed with other Viltrumites, which is why the war ultimately depends on Mark and Nolan, which is why the war's most brutal moments involve the two people who are fighting their own kind. And the Viltrumite war's most insidious brutality is not in any single battle, it is in the math. The coalition of planets sends thousands of soldiers to fight approximately 50 remaining Viltrumites. Thousands against 50. And the 50 win, not because the coalition soldiers are cowardly or incompetent. They are brave and well-trained and fighting for their homes and their families and their survival. They lose because the power differential is too large. A single Viltrumite warrior can absorb the combined weapons fire of an entire battalion and continue fighting. A single Viltrumite can destroy a warship by flying through it. The math does not work. The numbers do not matter. The courage does not matter. The preparation does not matter. What matters is the biological fact of Viltrumite physiology, which is that a Viltrumite body is harder than any weapon the Coalition can deploy against it. The war is decided by genetics, and the genetics belong to the aggressors, and the resistance is futile in a mathematical sense. And the show makes the audience watch the futility play out across multiple episodes of Coalition soldiers fighting and dying and fighting and dying, and the Viltrumites barely noticing the effort. The brutality is in the irrelevance of sacrifice. The Coalition soldiers sacrifice everything. Their sacrifice does not change the outcome. The outcome is determined by the handful of Viltrumite defectors who fight on the Coalition side, by Mark and Nolan and Thetis, because only Viltrumites can hurt Viltrumites, because the math only changes when the equation includes beings of equal force, because heroism without power is just a more admirable way of dying. This is what the show is saying about power, not just superpowers, power in general. The show is making an argument about the nature of disparity. When the gap between two forces is large enough, the weaker force's virtues become irrelevant. It does not matter how brave the Coalition soldiers are. It does not matter how justified their cause is. It does not matter how many of them are willing to die. What matters is the gap. The gap between Viltrumite bone and Coalition weaponry. The gap between Viltrumite speed and Coalition reaction time. The gap between Viltrumite lifespan and Coalition mortality. The gap is the violence. The gap is the brutality. The individual punches and kicks and torn bodies are just the gap expressing itself in physical form. The war is not brutal because of what the Viltrumites do to the Coalition soldiers. The war is brutal because the Coalition soldiers never had a chance, and they knew they never had a chance. And they fought anyway, and the fighting changed nothing except the number of dead. And the dead are counted by the 1,000. And the show makes you feel every one of them, even though it does not show you most of them, because the show has taught you by now to fill in the gaps yourself, to populate the wide shots with individual lives, to understand that every dot falling from a destroyed warship is a person who had a morning routine and a favorite food, and a person they loved. The 33rd moment is the destruction of Viltrum. Season 4, the planet Viltrum is destroyed during the war. Mark, Nolan, and Thetis fly through the planet's core at maximum speed, while Space Racer fires a beam weapon that destabilizes the planet's structural integrity. The planet cracks, it splits, it comes apart, and the show depicts this not as a triumph, but as an extinction event. Viltrum has a population, cities, infrastructure, civilians. The planet's destruction kills everyone on it who cannot fly, which is the vast majority of the population. The show does not dwell on the civilian deaths. It does not show them individually, but it shows the planet breaking apart and the pieces drifting and the debris field expanding and the silence of space after the explosion. And the silence contains the deaths of millions. The brutality is in the omission. The show kills millions of people and does not show you any of them dying. It shows you a planet breaking. It lets you fill in the rest. And the rest is worse than anything animation could depict, because your imagination does not have a budget, and does not have content restrictions, and does not have an animation team that can soften the impact with artistic choices. Your imagination shows you the truth, and the truth is that the heroes destroyed a world. The 34th moment is Thetis' death. Season 4. Thetis is the leader of the Coalition of Planets. He is also a Viltrumite defector, the oldest and most powerful Viltrumite to have turned against the Empire. He has been fighting the Empire for centuries. He dies during the Viltrumite War. Thrag kills him. The fight is not close. Thetis is old and Thrag is in his prime, and the gap between them is decisive. Thrag breaks Thetis' arms. He breaks his legs, he caves in his chest, and then he removes Thetis' head. Not with a clean strike, but with a twisting pull, the kind of motion you use to remove a stubborn lid from a jar. The head separates from the body with a sound that the show's sound designers clearly spent time crafting. A wet, fibrous, tearing sound that communicates the breaking of muscle and tendon and vertebrae in a way that makes the audience feel the separation in their own necks. Thetis dies, and the leader of the resistance is gone, and the war continues without him. Because wars do not stop for the death of leaders. They adapt. They find new reasons to continue. The 35th moment belongs to Powerplex. Season 3. Scott Duvall is a man whose sister was killed as collateral damage during one of Invincible's fights. Scott gains the ability to absorb and redirect kinetic energy. He channels his grief into rage and his rage into a vendetta against Mark. He becomes Powerplex. He attacks Mark publicly, and the fight escalates. But the brutality is not in the fight between Powerplex and Mark. The brutality is in what happens to Powerplex's family. Scott has a wife and a baby. In a moment of catastrophic miscalculation, Scott uses his wife and son as bait, staging a hostage situation to draw Mark out. Mark arrives, the fight begins, Mark punches Powerplex. Powerplex absorbs the kinetic energy. The absorbed energy builds, and when Powerplex releases it, the discharge is uncontrolled. The energy blast radiates outward in all directions, and Scott's wife and son are within the radius. The blast incinerates them. The show depicts the immediate aftermath. 2 charred bodies. The shapes are still recognizable as a woman holding a child. The skin is blackened. The eyes are gone. The postures are frozen in the positions they held at the moment of death. The wife reaching toward her husband, the child held against the wife's chest. Powerplex killed his own family with the power he was using to avenge his family. The circularity is the cruelty. The grief created the weapon that created more grief. And the show does not offer Powerplex redemption or understanding or a clean resolution. It offers him the sight of what he has done, and the knowledge that he did it, and the silence that follows. There is a question that the Powerplex storyline forces the audience to confront, and the question is uncomfortable because it does not have a clean answer. The question is Powerplex wrong? Not wrong about the method. The method is obviously wrong. Kidnapping and electrical assault are wrong, but is Powerplex wrong about the cause? His sister died because she was standing near a fight between superpowered beings. She was collateral damage. She was one of the names in the background, one of the faces in the wide shot, one of the people the hero did not save because the hero was focused on the villain. And Powerplex looked at his sister's death and arrived at a conclusion that the show never fully refutes. The heroes are responsible for the damage they cause, even when the damage is unintentional. Mark did not kill Powerplex's sister on purpose, but Mark's fight killed her. And the distinction between intentional and incidental is a distinction that matters more to the person causing the damage than to the person receiving it. To the dead, the intention is irrelevant. The dead are equally dead regardless of whether the force that killed them was aimed at them or aimed at someone standing next to them. Powerplex understands this, and the audience is forced to understand it too, and the understanding is brutal because it implicates the hero. It says that Mark Grayson, the person the audience has been rooting for, is responsible for deaths. Not villain deaths, not combat deaths, civilian deaths. The deaths of people who were standing in the wrong place when the sky fell. And the sky fell because Mark was fighting. And Mark was fighting because that is what heroes do. And what heroes do kills people. And the people it kills have brothers, and the brothers have grief, and the grief has a name, and the name is Powerplex. The 36th moment is the recurring brutality of Mark's face. Every season, the show has a visual motif that it deploys with deliberate consistency. Mark's face gets destroyed. Not damaged, destroyed. In Season 1, Omni-Man beats Mark until his face is unrecognizable. In Season 2, the fight with Angstrom Levy leaves Mark's face covered in someone else's blood. In Season 3, Conquest rearranges Mark's facial structure with repeated blows. In Season 4, the pattern continues and escalates. The brutality is in the repetition. The show uses Mark's face as a canvas that gets painted with violence, and then heals, and then gets painted again. Each beating leaves Mark's face more damaged than the last. Each healing returns his face to normal, and the cycle continues. The audience watches a young man's face get destroyed and rebuilt and destroyed and rebuilt. And the rebuilding does not erase the memory of the destruction. The audience remembers the swelling, the audience remembers the blood, the audience remembers the teeth broken and scattered on the ground. Mark's face heals. The audience's memory of what was done to it does not. The 37th moment is Debbie's hand, Season 4, Episode 5, titled Give Us a Moment. Debbie Grayson visits Nolan. The context is complicated. Nolan has returned. He has changed, or says he has changed. Debbie has rebuilt her life. She has found sobriety. She has found purpose, and she sees the man who nearly killed her son and destroyed her family. And she does not scream, and she does not cry. She punches him. She punches him in the face, and her hand breaks. Nolan's face is Viltrumite bone. Debbie's hand is human bone. The disparity is absolute. Debbie's fist impacts Nolan's jaw, and every bone in her hand shatters. The pain is immediate and total. Debbie's hand is ruined. It will never fully heal. And the brutality is in the metaphor made physical. Debbie has been trying to hurt Nolan with words and with distance and with absence for 3 seasons. And the first time she tries to hurt him with her body breaks against his. The punch does not move Nolan's face. It does not leave a mark. It does not register. The only person injured by Debbie's violence is Debbie. And this is the show's most concise statement about the power imbalance at the center of every relationship between a Viltrumite and a human. The human can love the Viltrumite. The human can hate the Viltrumite. The human can try to hurt the Viltrumite. And the Viltrumite will not feel it. The hurt will travel backward through the fist and into the body that threw the punch, and the Viltrumite will stand there, unmarked, and the human will stand there broken, and the distance between them will be measured in fractures. What makes Debbie's scene extraordinary is the performance. Sandra Oh voices Debbie Grayson. Sandra Oh is a performer who understands that the most devastating acting happens in the smallest moments. The punch is not a big moment in the traditional dramatic sense. It is not a speech. It is not a confrontation that builds over minutes of dialogue. It is a single physical act that lasts less than a second and contains an entire marriage and its destruction, and the aftermath of the destruction and the rage that survives the destruction, and the impotence of the rage when directed at a person who cannot be hurt by it. Sandra Oh delivers the gasp of pain that follows the punch with a specificity that suggests she understood exactly what the moment meant. The gasp is not just pain. It is surprise. It is the surprise of a woman who knew intellectually that punching a Viltrumite would break her hand, but who could not prevent her body from trying, because the body has its own logic, and the body's logic said, hit him. Hit the man who destroyed your family. Hit him with everything you have. And everything Debbie has is a human fist. And a human fist against a Viltrumite jaw is nothing. And the nothing is the point. And the nothing is the cruelty. Because Debbie cannot even have the satisfaction of causing pain to the person who caused her more pain than she thought a person could survive. The broken hand becomes a symbol for the remainder of the season. Debbie wraps it, she ices it. She goes about her day with a hand that cannot grip properly, that sends shooting pain through her wrist when she forgets and uses it automatically, that reminds her constantly of the gap between what she wanted to do and what she was capable of doing. The hand is a monument to impotence. It is a trophy of a fight that was lost before it began. And every time the camera catches Debbie adjusting the wrapping or wincing when she reaches for something, the audience is reminded of the punch and the jaw and the gap and the silence that followed, and the fact that Nolan stood there, unmarked, and watched his wife break herself against him. And the expression on his face was not anger and not contempt and not satisfaction. It was sadness. Nolan was sad that Debbie's hand broke. He was sad the way you are sad when something fragile falls off a shelf. The sadness was real. The sadness was condescending. The sadness was the most brutal thing in the scene because it was genuine, and it came from a place of absolute power, and it reduced Debbie's rage to a thing to be pitied. And being pitied by the person you are trying to hurt is worse than being hurt by them. The 38th moment is the second Conquest fight, Season 4, Episode 5. Mark faces Conquest again. Conquest has been rebuilt, reanimated, enhanced. He is faster now, stronger, and the fight is worse than the first one. Conquest punches through Mark's torso. His fist enters Mark's abdomen and exits through his back. Mark's internal organs are visible through the wound. Conquest does not withdraw his fist. He reaches inside Mark's body and grasps Mark's intestines and pulls. The intestines emerge from the wound in loops. Mark screams. The scream is the sound of a person being disassembled while alive. Conquest continues to pull. The show's creators have said that this scene made even them uncomfortable. Robert Kirkman has described watching the final animation and asking whether they had gone too far. The answer, apparently, was no. The scene remained. Mark survives. Mark defeats Conquest again, this time permanently. But the image of a man having his intestines pulled through a hole in his stomach by a reanimated corpse of a warrior he already killed is the image the show chose to use as its definitive statement about what superpowered violence looks like when the animation matches the ambition of the writing. And the second Conquest fight in Season 4 accomplishes something narratively that most sequels fail to achieve. It makes the second encounter worse than the first. Most superhero stories follow a pattern where the hero loses the first fight and wins the second. The pattern implies growth. The hero learned something. The hero trained harder. The hero developed a new strategy. Invincible follows this pattern structurally, but inverts it emotionally. Mark wins the second Conquest fight, yes, but the winning costs more than the first fight cost. The injuries are worse, the psychological damage is deeper, the victory is emptier. Mark does not feel like a hero who has overcome a challenge. He feels like a person who has survived an ordeal by becoming something he does not want to be. The second Conquest fight strips away the last vestiges of the young hero who appeared in Season 1. The Mark who emerges from the second Conquest fight is not the same person who entered it. He is harder, he is quieter, he is more familiar with the interior of his own body than any person should be. Because his intestines were pulled through a hole in his abdomen and he watched them emerge and he kept fighting. How do you go back to normal after that? How do you sit in a classroom? How do you eat dinner with your family? How do you hold your girlfriend's hand with the hand that was inside your own stomach 30 minutes ago? Pushing your organs back in, keeping yourself alive through the sheer refusal to die. The answer is, You do not go back to normal. Normal is destroyed along with everything else the fight touches. And what replaces normal is the new baseline, which includes the memory of your own intestines in your own hands, which includes the knowledge that your body can be opened and you can survive the opening, which includes the understanding that survival is not the same as recovery, and recovery may not be possible and the fight may never truly end, even after the opponent is dead. The 39th moment is what the Viltrumite War does to Nolan's body. Season 4. Nolan fights alongside Mark against the Viltrumite forces. Nolan is older now. He is not the man he was in Season 1. The invincibility that defined him has eroded, not physically, but spiritually. He fights with less certainty. He hesitates where he once would have struck, and the Viltrumite warriors exploit the hesitation. Nolan takes injuries that Season 1 Nolan would not have taken. He bleeds from wounds that should close but take longer. He is slower to recover. The brutality is in the aging, not biological aging, because Viltrumites do not age perceptibly. Emotional aging. The aging that comes from caring about the people you might hurt, which is an aging that Viltrumite warriors are not supposed to experience. Nolan's weakness is his conscience. His conscience was grown on Earth in a house with a wife and a son over 20 years of pretending to be human until the pretending became real. And now the conscience that Earth gave him is making him vulnerable in combat. And the vulnerability is getting him hurt. And the hurt is visible. And the audience watches the most powerful character in the series become fragile because he started to feel. The 40th moment is the concept of the reaniman, not a specific scene, a recurring presence. Throughout the series, D.A. Sinclair creates reanimen from the bodies of dead humans. The show returns to this concept repeatedly, each time adding a detail that makes it worse. In one scene, a reaniman's visor cracks during combat, and the face beneath it is recognizable as a specific person who appeared earlier in the series as a living character. The audience sees the face and realizes that the person they watched live and speak and exist has been harvested and rebuilt and sent to fight as a machine. The show does not comment on this. It does not have a character deliver a speech about the ethics of reanimation. It simply shows the cracked visor and the dead face behind it, and moves on. The brutality is in the casualness. The show treats the existence of reanimen as a background fact. They appear in fight scenes. They are damaged and destroyed and replaced. The supply of dead bodies is apparently inexhaustible. The program continues, and the audience absorbs the horror incrementally. Not in a single devastating moment, but in a series of small, accumulating details that build into a picture of institutional violence that is as brutal as any superpowered fight. Possibly more so because the superpowered fights end. The Reanimen program does not end. It is a machine for converting the dead into weapons. And the machine runs continuously. And the machine is funded by the government. And the government is supposed to protect people. And the people it is protecting are being protected by their own dead. And the Reanimen deserve one final observation, because they represent the show's most sustained critique of institutional power. The Reanimen program is not a one-time decision. It is an ongoing operation. It requires infrastructure. It requires personnel. It requires a supply chain. Bodies must be sourced. The sourcing has protocols. The protocols have been approved by committees. The committees report to Cecil. Cecil reports to no one. The chain of command terminates at a single man who sits in a room underground and makes decisions about how many dead bodies will be converted into weapons this quarter, and the decisions are recorded in files. And the files are classified. And the classification means that no one outside the program knows it exists, which means no one outside the program can object to it, which means the objection dies in the classification, which means the classification is the weapon, not the Reanimen. The Reanimen are the product. The classification is the tool that makes the product possible, and the show understands this. The show understands that the most dangerous weapon in the Global Defense Agency's arsenal is not a cybernetic corpse soldier. It is a filing system. It is the bureaucratic infrastructure that allows a man to sign a form and convert a dead college student into government property without anyone asking whether the conversion is moral. The form does not have a single field for morality. The form has fields for body weight and bone density and projected combat effectiveness. The morality was removed from the form in an earlier draft, and no one noticed, and the absence went unquestioned, and the absence is the brutality. The 41st brutal moment is what Mark does to the alternate Marks during the Invincible War. Season 3. Mark fights his alternate universe counterparts. He fights versions of himself. He fights men with his face and his voice and his powers who have chosen a different path. And to stop them, Mark has to hurt them the way he would hurt any enemy, which means Mark is punching his own face. He is breaking his own bones. He is tearing through bodies that look exactly like his body. The violence is self-referential in a way that the show uses to devastating effect. When Mark punches an alternate Mark, the audience sees both the attacker and the victim, and they are the same person, and the violence becomes a mirror that reflects in both directions simultaneously. Mark is hurting himself by proxy. He is demonstrating that the violence he inflicts on others is violence he could receive. Because the others are him, because the mirror does not lie, because the fist and the face are the same fist and the same face, and the damage travels both ways. The 42nd moment is the moment Amber sees. Season 2, Amber Bennett, Mark's girlfriend, is present during a fight. She sees Mark in action. She sees what he can do. She sees the bodies. She sees the blood. She sees the boyfriend she has been arguing with about reliability and communication and trust turn into something that can crack the earth with a punch. And her expression changes. It is not awe. It is not admiration. It is fear. For a fraction of a second, before she composes herself, before she arranges her features into something more socially acceptable, Amber is afraid of Mark. She is afraid of what Mark is. She is afraid of the distance between what a human can do and what a Viltrumite can do. And that fear, that fraction of a second of honest reaction, is one of the most brutal moments in the series, because it is one of the most human. Amber loves Mark, and Amber, for one fraction of 1 second, is afraid of him. And both of those things are true simultaneously, and neither one cancels the other. And the coexistence of love and fear in a single expression on a single face is the show's most honest depiction of what it would actually be like to love a person who could kill you by accident. The 43rd moment of brutality is what happens to William Clockwell. Season 2. William is Mark's best friend. William is a normal human being. He has no powers, no training, no connection to the superhero world except through Mark. And in Season 2, William's boyfriend Rick Sheridan is kidnapped by D.A. Sinclair and turned into a reanimin. William discovers this. He finds Rick in a laboratory, strapped to a table, half machine, half person. The boy he loved converted into a weapon. The brutality is in the love. William loved Rick. William held Rick's hand and kissed Rick's mouth and slept next to Rick's body. And now Rick's body has been opened and filled with metal and wire, and the boy inside the body is gone. The body remains. The person does not. William has to look at the face of the person he loved and understand that the face is now a mask worn by a machine. And the machine will follow orders, and the orders will be issued by the same government that Mark works with. And the chain of causality runs from William's boyfriend to Mark's employer, and there is no clean place to put the anger. The 44th moment is the quiet devastation of Mark's recurring nightmares, multiple seasons. The show depicts Mark's dreams. They are not subtle. Mark dreams of the train. He dreams of the passengers. He dreams of his father's hand on the back of his head. He dreams of Angstrom Levy's face deforming under his fists. He dreams of blood. The dreams are rendered in the same animation style as the waking world, which means the audience cannot always distinguish between what is real and what is remembered. The brutality is in the persistence. The violence Mark experiences does not stay in the episodes where it occurs. It follows him home. It follows him into sleep. It meets him in the dark behind his closed eyes and replays the worst moments with perfect fidelity, because Viltrumite memory does not degrade the way human memory does. Mark remembers every face, every impact, every death. The violence is stored in him like data in a hard drive, permanent and accessible and waiting to be recalled at the worst possible moment. And the nightmares raise a question that the show handles with unusual sophistication for the genre. The question is, what does a Viltrumite brain do with trauma? Human brains have mechanisms for processing traumatic experience. Memory fades. Details blur. The sharp edges of a traumatic event are softened by time and by the brain's natural tendency to compress and distort older memories. But Viltrumite biology is not human biology. Viltrumite bodies do not degrade. Viltrumite cells regenerate with perfect fidelity. And if the body does not degrade, does the brain? Does a Viltrumite forget the way a human forgets? Does time soften the memory of violence the way it softens human memory? The show suggests that it does not. The show suggests that Mark's memories of the train and the beating and the Angstrom Levy fight are stored with perfect clarity, that the faces of the dead are as sharp in his mind years later as they were in the moment, that the blood does not fade and the screams do not quiet and the weight does not lighten. If this is true, then Mark's psychology is fundamentally different from a human psychology. A human can recover from trauma because a human can forget, not completely, but partially. The edges blur, the details recede, the memory becomes manageable. But if Mark cannot forget, if his Viltrumite brain preserves every traumatic experience with photographic precision, then recovery is impossible. The weight only accumulates. The memories only stack, and Mark has to carry all of them, every face and every impact and every death, for 500 years. The nightmares are not a temporary symptom. They are a permanent condition. They are the price of Viltrumite memory applied to human conscience. The 45th moment is the institutional violence of the Global Defense Agency itself. Not a single scene, but a pattern that spans all 4 seasons. Cecil Stedman runs the GDA like a man who has accepted that the world is a butcher shop and his job is to make sure the meat is cut efficiently. He deploys superheroes like assets. He deploys reanimen like ammunition. He monitors Mark through satellites and drones and embedded surveillance. He makes decisions that result in death, and he catalogs the deaths and files the reports, and the reports go into folders, and the folders go into cabinets, and the cabinets are in a building underground where no one can see them. The brutality is administrative. It is the violence of policy. It is the violence of a man who has calculated the acceptable number of civilian casualties per incident and who adjusts the number annually based on threat assessment data. Cecil is not a villain. He is a bureaucrat. And the show argues that bureaucratic violence, the violence of systems and institutions and authorized responses, is more brutal than any individual act of superpowered destruction. Because bureaucratic violence does not end. It does not climax. It does not resolve. It continues. It is funded. It is staffed. It has a pension plan. The 46th moment is what Battle Beast does to Thrag. Season 4, Battle Beast has been waiting for this fight for his entire life. Thrag is the strongest Viltrumite alive. Battle Beast is the strongest non-Viltrumite warrior in the known galaxy. They meet, and the fight is the thing Battle Beast has always wanted. The fight that gives his life meaning. The fight that justifies his existence. The battle spans continents. It lasts for days. Buildings are leveled not by the combatants, but by the shockwaves of their impacts. The ground cracks. The sky fills with debris. Battle Beast bites into Thrag's skull, and Thrag responds by driving his fist upward through Battle Beast's jaw. They trade blows that would kill any other being in the universe. They bleed from wounds that would be fatal to anything else. And Battle Beast is losing. He knows he is losing. He matches Thrag wound for wound, cutting himself when Thrag is cut to ensure the fight remains fair, and this honorable act is his undoing, because Thrag does not fight with honor. Thrag fights to win. And winning, for Thrag, means reaching inside Battle Beast's open wound and finding his heart and pulling it free. Battle Beast dies with his heart in Thrag's hand. His last words are a thank you. He thanks Thrag for giving him the death he wanted. The brutality is in the gratitude. A warrior so committed to his philosophy that he thanks the person who killed him for the quality of the killing. And Battle Beast's philosophy deserves a moment of examination because it is the purest expression of a worldview that the show treats with something close to respect. Battle Beast does not fight for territory. He does not fight for revenge. He does not fight for ideology or patriotism or survival. He fights because fighting is what he is. Fighting is his identity. Fighting is his purpose. Fighting is the thing that makes him feel alive in a way that nothing else can replicate. He has traveled across galaxies looking for opponents worthy of his strength. He has toppled civilizations not out of malice, but out of a desire to find resistance. He wants to be pushed. He wants to be matched. He wants to stand across from another being and know that the outcome is uncertain, because uncertainty is the only thing that makes him feel present, the only thing that penetrates the boredom of being the strongest person in every room he enters. And when he finds Thrag, when he finds the one being in the universe who can match him blow for blow, the fight is not violence. It is communion. It is the closest thing Battle Beast has to a spiritual experience. The blood is sacramental. The broken bones are prayers. The pain is evidence that he is alive, truly alive, in a way that he has not been alive since the last time someone made him bleed, which was so long ago that the memory has faded. Thrag gives Battle Beast the thing he has been searching for his entire life, a worthy death, and Battle Beast receives it with gratitude. The thank you is not ironic. It is not the dark humor of a dying man. It is sincere. It is the most sincere thing Battle Beast has ever said. He means it. He is grateful. He has been given the gift of dying at the hands of someone who had to work to kill him. And the work is the respect, and the respect is the gift. And the gift is the last thing Battle Beast feels before the heart is removed from his chest and the lights go out. The 47th moment belongs to the children, not a specific child. All of them. Throughout the series, children are present in the margins of the violence. Children are in the buildings that collapse. Children are on the streets that crater. Children are in the cities that burn. The show almost never focuses on them directly, but they are there in the backgrounds, in the wide shots, in the crowd scenes that precede the destruction. A child's shoe in rubble, a stroller overturned near a crater, a school bus visible in the wreckage of a bridge. The show populates its destruction with evidence of childhood, and the evidence is never addressed, never discussed, never mourned by the characters. And the silence around the evidence is the loudest thing in the entire series. The brutality is in the periphery. The show puts children at the edges of the frame, and does not protect them, and does not comment on their presence, and does not offer reassurance that they survived. They are simply there, small and vulnerable, in the debris, and then the scene moves on, and the debris is cleared, and the street is rebuilt, and no one mentions the stroller. The 48th moment is what Mark becomes in the mirror. Season 4, there is a scene where Mark looks at his own reflection after a fight. His face is healing. The Viltrumite biology is closing the wounds, smoothing the bruises, resetting the bones. And Mark watches. He watches his face return to normal. He watches the evidence of the violence disappear from his skin, one cell at a time. And the expression he wears while watching is not relief. It is not gratitude. It is suspicion. Mark is suspicious of his own healing. He is suspicious of a body that can absorb the punishment he has absorbed and return to default settings as if nothing happened. Because the body's return to normal is a lie. Something happened. Something terrible happened. And the body is erasing the evidence. The body is covering it up. The body is presenting a face to the world that says everything is fine. And Mark knows it is not fine. And the disconnect between what his body shows and what his mind carries is the most brutal mirror the show has ever held up. The bruise heals. The memory does not. The body forgets. The person inside the body cannot. The 49th moment is the accumulated weight, not a scene, a sensation. By the end of Season 4, the audience has watched approximately 8 hours of content in which people are beaten, broken, torn apart, disemboweled, incinerated, crushed, impaled, decapitated, dismembered, detonated, and reassembled. The audience has watched a boy become a man through the mechanism of receiving and inflicting violence. The audience has watched a family destroyed and rebuilt and destroyed again by the consequences of power. The audience has watched an entire planet shattered. The audience has watched a funeral for an empty coffin. And the accumulated weight of all of this violence settles into the audience, the way fatigue settles into a body, gradually, imperceptibly, until the moment you try to stand and realize you cannot. The 49th brutal moment is the realization that you have been carrying all of it. Every death, every injury, every scream and every silence after the screaming stops. The show has been loading you with weight for 4 seasons, and you have been carrying it, and you did not notice the carrying until now, until this moment. Until the count reaches 49 and you realize that the brutality is not on the screen. The brutality is in you. It is in the audience. It is in the act of watching and remembering and continuing to watch. The 50th and final brutal moment is the simplest. It is the opening scene of the very first episode, replayed in your memory. The man in the room, the bodies on the floor, the blood on his hands, the expression on his face. Watch it again in your mind. You have seen 49 moments of brutality since that first scene. You have watched a world built and destroyed and rebuilt around that initial act of violence. And now go back to the beginning. Go back to the room. Go back to the bodies. Go back to the blood. Notice what has changed. Not in the scene is the same. What has changed is you. You are watching the same man stand in the same room over the same bodies, but you are not the same person who watched it the first time. You know things now. You know the names of the dead. You know their families. You know what happened after. You know the train and the funeral and the crater and the fist and the intestines and the skeleton bomb and the charred mother holding the charred child. You know all of it. And the scene is the same. The blood is the same. The expression is the same. But the weight is different. The weight is yours. 50 moments of brutality, and every single one of them started in that room, with that man, with that expression, with the bodies on the floor, with a decision that started everything, with the blood that is still wet, that will always be wet, that will never dry because the show will not let it dry, because the drying would mean the forgetting, and Invincible does not forget, and will not let you forget either. And there's something about the 50th moment, the return to the beginning, that the show itself seems to understand. The first episode ends with the massacre. The series, when it eventually ends, will end with Mark sitting in starlight, 500 years old, smiling. The distance between those two endpoints is the distance between violence and its aftermath, between the act and the consequence, between the blood on the floor and the smile in the stars. And the show asks whether the distance was worth traveling, whether the journey from the room full of bodies to the chair under the stars justifies the cost of the journey, whether the 50 moments of brutality that connect the beginning to the end are the price of the ending, or the reason the ending matters. The answer, if the show provides one, is that the ending cannot exist without the beginning. The smile cannot exist without the blood. The peace cannot exist without the war. Mark cannot become the person who smiles in Starlight without first being the boy who was held against a train, the teenager who beat a man to death, the young man who watched his girlfriend's organs spill from her torso, the leader who watched a planet shatter. The brutality is not an obstacle on the path to the ending. The brutality is the path. And this is what separates Invincible from every other superhero story that has ever been told. Most superhero stories use violence as spectacle. The punches are exciting, the explosions are thrilling. The audience cheers when the hero hits the villain. Invincible does not want you to cheer. Invincible wants you to flinch. It wants you to look away and then look back. It wants you to carry the weight of what you have seen into the next scene and the next episode and the next season. It wants the violence to accumulate inside you the way it accumulates inside Mark, until the weight is part of you, until the flinch is automatic, until the blood on the screen is not red ink and digital paint, but something that feels real because the show has spent 4 seasons teaching you to treat it as real. The 50 moments listed here are not the 50 worst things that happen in Invincible. They are the 50 moments that changed the audience. They are the moments that taught the audience to see superhero violence differently, to understand that the punch has a consequence, and the consequence has a name, and the name has a family, and the family has a grief. And the grief does not end when the credits roll. The first episode opened with a man standing in a room full of bodies. The blood on his hands was still wet. 4 seasons later, the blood is still wet. That is the promise and the price and the argument and the point. Invincible does not let the blood dry. It does not let the wounds close. It does not let the audience forget what it has shown them. And the refusal to forget, the refusal to sanitize, the refusal to protect the audience from the truth of what these stories contain is the most brutal thing the show has ever done. It looked at the superhero genre and said, if you are going to tell stories about gods walking among mortals, you owe the mortals the truth about what the walk-in costs. And then it spent 4 seasons paying the debt, one broken bone at a time, one torn body at a time, one moment at a time, 50 moments in total, each one heavier than the last, each one carrying the weight of the ones that came before, until the weight becomes the story, and the story becomes the weight, and the audience carries both, and the carrying is the watching, and the watching is the point. If you made it to the end, subscribing means the world. Thank you for listening. Sleep well.